Hey guys, today I'll be drawing and animating in 2D in Blender using the grease pencil tool. In this project I'll be using the 2.93 version of Blender. So let's get started. Here are the steps to follow. Step 1. Create a new 2D animation file. We'll start with the splash screen today. If you just launched Blender, you will see the splash screen right away. You can create a new 2D animation file by choosing the appropriate option. It's over here. But if you already closed the splash screen, you can still create a new file from the File menu by selecting New 2D Animation. Good. Step 2. Draw some lines. As soon as the new file is created, you're ready to draw. The grease pencil object that you can use to draw is already there. You can see it in the outliner. It's called stroke. So just drag your mouse over the white canvas and draw something. Step 3. Display the names of the drawing tools. You can use some pretty handy tools to draw with the grease pencil. The toolbar is on the left, over here. You can now hover your mouse over the right border of the toolbar and drag it to the right. This way you will expand the toolbar and you'll be able to see the names of the tools. Step 4. Erase the drawing. Before we start working on our actual drawing, let's erase the one we just drew. To do that, select the Erase tool here and increase the radius of the eraser. Let's make it bigger, like 100. And let's erase everything. Step 5. Change the brush. Now, before we start drawing the waves, let's make sure we're on the lines layer. Here we are indeed on the lines layer. Let's also make sure we're at frame 1, which we are. Now let's select the draw tool here. And one more thing, the brush. We want to change it to pen. So click on the brush drop down and select pen. Step 6. Draw a line using the Curve tool. We're going to use the Curve tool, so just select it in the toolbar. It's here. Now zoom out a bit by scrolling the scroll wheel on the mouse. Now draw a short line near the bottom left corner. Hold down Shift to constrain this to the horizontal direction, like so. Step 7. Shape a single wave. Now you can see two blue dots over here. Now drag them to shape a single wave. So let's move this one up, like this, and this one down. And here we have a single wave. Step 8. Confirm the operation. Hit Enter to confirm the drawing operation. And now we have a wave. Step 9. Add an array modifier. We need the whole ocean, not just a single wave. So let's add an array modifier. To do so, go to the Modifier tab, which is over here, and select Array Modifier. Now you can see two waves separated from each other. Now we want the single waves to be connected in horizontal direction. To do that, make sure the relative offset checkbox is checked, and then type in the value of the offset in the factor X slot. This number may be different for you depending on how long your single wave is. In my example, I already checked it out, it's 0.65. Now they are connected to form one longer wave. Anyway, make sure the waves are connected smoothly without any gaps between them. Now, depending on how long your single wave is, you may need a different number of single waves to form the first row of waves. Just set the count value here to the appropriate number. In my case, it's 6. So I need 6 single waves to create the first row of waves. Step 10. Apply the array modifier. Now we're going to apply the modifier, but to do that we must be in object mode. So let's go to object mode. Let's deselect all, and here in the modifier tab just hit on this arrow and click apply. Good. Step 11. Close the wave. Let's close the wave so that we can later fill it with color. First, go to edit mode, select all, and move the wave up by hitting G, Z, 1. Enter. Now let's go to draw mode again. And now select the polyline tool, which is here, and draw a line that consists of 3 segments. The first segment should start near the left side of the wave and slightly above it. Start drawing and hold down the Shift key so that the segment remains vertical. When you're near the bottom of the canvas, left click to finish the first segment, and then immediately draw the second segment from left to right. Also, hold down Shift to make it horizontal. Next, enter. Repeat this step one more time to draw the third segment, this time vertically up. So hold down Shift and go up. Good. Finally, right-click to finish it off. Step 12. Fill the row of waves with color. Now we're ready to fill the waves with colors. There are going to be more rows of waves soon. Let's make each row of waves a slightly different color. Let's start with the only row we have. Select the stroke object in the outliner. Now select the fill tool over here. And in the dope sheet, select the fills layer. Go to the material tab. Select one of the preset fill materials, like for example solid fill, and set the base color to a shade of blue or green. Here under fill, not here under stroke, but here under fill. So let's make it something like greenish bluish, like this. Good. Now make sure the fill checkbox is checked and the stroke checkbox is unchecked. Then hover your mouse over the closed wave shape and left click to add the color. Now let's rename the material Waves 1, as there are going to be 2 materials for the waves to make them look different. Step 13. Add more waves. Now we have a single row of waves, but we want more of them, like 5. So let's add them now one by one. Go to object mode and select the stroke object in the outliner. Now hit Shift D to duplicate the first row of waves, and then immediately Z 0.5 to move it up. Enter to confirm. Then hit G X 0.2 to move it slightly to the right. It's a good time to rename our strokes. So Rename the first one Waves 1. For the first row of waves, and the second one Waves 2. Good. Let's add a new material for the second row of waves. So, go to the Material tab, if you're not there, and hit the button with a plus sign on it to add a new material slot. Right here. Good. Then, hit the New button to add a new material. Good. Rename the material Waves 2. Fine. Check the Fill box and uncheck the Stroke box. Then set the base color here to something different than the first color. So let's say something more blue than green. Yeah, I think this will do. Finally, go to Draw mode and select the Fill tool if not selected and fill this second row of waves with this color. Good. Now go to Object mode, select the first row of waves and duplicate it. Shift D. Then hit Z1 to move it up, Enter, and GX negative 0.1 to move it slightly to the left. Then select the second row and duplicate it. Shift D. Move it up, Z1, Enter, and to the right, GX 0.1. Enter. Finally, select the third row and duplicate it. Shift D, move it up, Z1, Enter, and to the left, GX negative 0.1. Enter. Now we have the 5 rows of waves that we wanted. Step 14. Add another stroke. We'll also draw a mermaid that will jump out of the ocean, over the waves, and back into the ocean. Let's create a new stroke object. So make sure you're still in Object mode and add a new stroke by hitting Shift plus A and then selecting Grease Pencil, Stroke. You will see some basic shape appear. The new stroke will also appear in the outliner. Rename it Mermaid. As you can see, near the bottom of the screen, now we can see the dope sheet for this particular stroke. Step 15. Delete the points. We want to create the mermaid from scratch. So let's go to Edit mode, select all, hit X, and then Points to delete the points that we got when creating the stroke. Step 16. Draw the mermaid. Now go to Draw mode, make sure you're on the Lines layer and at frame 1. Now select the Draw tool that will let you draw freehand and draw a mermaid. So I'm going to zoom in a bit and now draw the mermaid. Now yours doesn't have to be as perfect as mine. Good. Let's zoom out. Step 17. Move the mermaid down. Now let's move the mermaid to the position she will start at. To do that, we must be in object mode. Now select the mermaid if not selected and move it down so that her head is below the second row of waves from the top. Now hit G. Here's the first row, the second row, like that. Now the head of the mermaid is under the two up rows of waves. Step 18. Create a wave collection. Now we have the mermaid and 5 waves. These are 5 distinct objects. Let's move them to a separate collection. So first right click over here and add new collection. Next, rename the collection Waves. And now move the 5 wave objects into it. To do that, just select them one by one. Waves 1, Shift, waves 2, 3, 4, 5, and release the Shift button and move them down to the Waves collection. And now they are in this collection. Step 19. Fill the mermaid with colors. Now we can fill the mermaid. In order to better see the mermaid and get the waves out of the way, let's temporarily hide them. Just click on this little eye icon next to the collection, and this will hide the waves. Now select the mermaid and zoom in to see it better. Good. Go to draw mode. Select the fill tool, and in the dope sheet, select the colors layer. Now go to the material tab, if you're not there, and click the plus sign to add a new material slot, and then the new button to add a new material. Rename the material Mermaid 1. And set the base color here under fill to any color you like. Like, for example, dark green. Okay. Now again, make sure the fill checkbox is checked and the stroke checkbox is unchecked. Then fill the body, the arms, and the tail of the mermaid using this color, this material. Good. Next, add as many materials as you like to fill the other parts of the mermaid's body. You can name them simply Mermaid 2, Mermaid 3, etc. Make sure that for each material the fill checkbox is checked and the stroke checkbox is unchecked. You can set the colors to your liking and fill the mermaid. Step 20. Merge the layers. Now the lines and the fills are on 2 separate layers. Let's merge them together. To do that, go to the Object Data tab, which is here, and you will see under Layers the same 2 layers as in the dope sheet: Lines, Colors, Lines, Colors. Now select the Lines layer and click the drop-down button over here and select Merge Down. Now we have just one layer. It's named just like the second layer before, so let's change it to something more meaningful, like Mermaid. You will see the new name in the dope sheet as well. Step 21. Merge down the layers of the waves. Now we're done with the mermaid, so we can unhide the waves by clicking on this icon, eye icon again. Fine. And just like we did with the mermaid, let's merge the layers of the waves. So go to Object Mode and select each wave object one by one. So first, the first one, and then in Object Data, select the lines layer and expand this drop down over here and select Merge Down. Good. You could now rename the new layer to waves or something, but it isn't necessary. Now let's repeat this step for the other layers. Step 22. Start a wave animation. Now we want the waves to be animated. They will just slide from left to right and back. We're gonna animate particular rows of waves. Make sure you're in object mode. Now our animation is gonna last 10 seconds, which means we need 240 frames. It's gonna be played at 24 frames per second. Let's switch from dope sheet to the timeline editor. Let's move it up a bit to see it better. And let's set the end frame to 240. Good. Also make sure that auto keying is on. This is this button over here, so that the keyframes are added automatically anytime a value changes. Now make sure you're still at frame 1. Now as you can see, we have already some keyframes here, and if you select the other waves, you will also see keyframes over here, but not if you select the first row of waves. This is because we haven't changed the position of the first row of waves, and these keyframes were not added because they are added when a value changes. Now to fix this, just select the first row of waves, so the waves 1 object, and hit I, and then location, rotation, and scale. This will add the keyframes at frame 1. There already should be keyframes for the other rows of waves, provided auto keying was on all the time. To make sure, just select waves 2, waves 3, 4, and 5 one by one and see if the keyframes are there. And as you can see, they are. If not, just add the keyframes like for waves 1. Now let's create 2 sliding cycles, each cycle consisting of the movement in one direction and back. We want one single sliding cycle to be 5 seconds long, so half the time of the animation. So after 2.5 seconds, the waves should change direction. This means we need to insert keyframes at the frames where the waves should change direction. These are frames 61, 121, and 181, because 60 frames are played in 2.5 seconds at 24 FPS. Now let's start with frame 61. So go to this frame, 61, it's over here. Now let's select all the odd rows of waves. So waves 1, waves 3, and waves 5. Just hold down the Control button to select these 3 rows of waves. Rows 2 and 4 are not selected. Now move the selected waves along the x-axis to the right, so hit G, X, point 4. Enter. When you move the selected parts, a new keyframe will be inserted at frame 61, which we can see over here. Good. Now, still at frame 61, deselect all the waves and select the two even rows. So, waves 2 and waves 4. Now move the selected rows of waves along the x-axis to the left, but just a little bit. So hit G, X, -0.1, Enter. The keyframes will be added automatically. Step 23. Duplicate keyframes. Select all the waves. You can do it by selecting the first one, holding down Shift and selecting the last one. All the waves in the middle will be selected too. Now, if you now go to frame 1, which you can do by hitting this button over here, and play the animation, it will play for the first 2.5 seconds, as expected. The waves will move to their target positions, but then they should turn back and move to their original positions. Then the cycle should be repeated. So, let's do that now. In the timeline, make sure only the first keyframe is selected. You can see it in yellow. This one is not selected. Now duplicate the keyframe by hitting Shift D and move it to frame 121. Good. Then duplicate again, so Shift D and move it to frame 240. Good. Next, select the keyframe at 61, at frame 61, just this one, duplicate it, Shift D, and move it to frame 181. Yes. Go to frame 1 and play the animation. Now it works as expected. The waves are going to the right and back to the left. Fine, we're done with the waves for now. Let's animate the mermaid. Step 24. Plan the mermaid animation. First of all, go to Object Mode, if you're not there, and select the mermaid in the outliner. Let's go to frame 1. To make sure she's behind the waves, hit N to open the sidebar and set the Y position to 0.1. The Y position of the waves is 0, so the mermaid will be placed in the back. Now let's think about how we want the mermaid to be animated. As you can see, it's now hidden behind the waves on the right. Let's make it jump over the water 3 times, each time in a greater distance. So first it will jump from right to left, then from left to right, and one more time from right to left. The whole animation takes 10 seconds. Let's plan it out then. So the first stage of the animation is gonna take 3 seconds, so from frame 0 to 72. This is going to be just the waves animation. Then the next stage is gonna take 1.5 seconds, so frame 73 to 108. This is going to be the first jump from right to left in near distance. Then 1 second for the third stage of the animation, so frames 109 to 132, and this is going to be just the waves animation. Then for 1.5 seconds, so frames 133 to 168, the second jump from left to right in a further distance. Then 1 second, frames 169 to 192, just the waves animation. Next, 1 second, frames 193 to 216, the third jump from right to left in the maximum distance. And finally, 1 second, so frames 217 to 240, just the waves animation. So now we know where the keyframes should be. But what exactly do we want to animate? First of all, the mermaid's position, but also its rotation. Each jump over the water must be divided into 2 parts. First, the mermaid must move up to her maximum height, where she's positioned horizontally, and then she must move down into the water, with her head pointing down. The mermaid must also flip horizontally between jumps, which can be accomplished by scaling it by a factor of -1 on the x-axis. So if we consider this, we can rewrite our keyframe plan like so. I'm not gonna read this aloud now because it's pretty long. We're gonna implement it in a minute. So now we're ready to implement the animation. Step 25. Animate the mermaid. Now the origin of the mermaid is probably outside its geometry. Actually, it's here. This is this little dot over here. Now to fix this, select the mermaid and go to the Object menu, set Origin and select Origin to Geometry. Now it's here. Now it will be much easier to handle the location and rotation of the mermaid. So with the mermaid animation plan in place, we can now add all the keyframes we need. As auto keying is on, we already have a keyframe at frame 1. But if you click here, you will see that the mermaid is now where the origin used to be. So move her to the position you want her to start at, which is on the right. G, move it here, move her here. Good. Now for the first 72 frames, we're gonna see just the sea animation, not the mermaid animation. So let's duplicate this keyframe, Shift D, and move it to frame 72, which is here. Next, let's move on to frame 90. Now the mermaid should be at her maximum height and rotated so that she's in horizontal position, heading left. So just hit G to move the mermaid somewhere here, and R to rotate her accordingly so that she's in horizontal position, like that. Good. The keyframe will be added automatically. Then go to frame 108 and move the mermaid down and to the left. G, down to the left, and rotate it so that her tail is above her head. R to rotate, like so. Now go to frame 132 and rotate the mermaid so that her rotation is more or less like at the beginning of the animation. Like so. Then hit S, X, -1 to flip her horizontally. Next, go to frame 150 and move the mermaid up. G, up. Rotate her so that she is in horizontal position. R to rotate. In the sidebar, set the Y location to 5. Move it up a little bit again. Now she's in a greater distance. So this moved the mermaid away from you into the sea. Fine. Next, go to frame 168. Move the mermaid down and to the right. And rotate her so that her tail is above her head again. Next, move on to frame 192. And rotate the mermaid so that her rotation is more or less like at the beginning of the animation again, just facing the opposite direction. R to rotate. Then hit S, X, -1, enter, to flip her horizontally. In the sidebar, set the Y location to 15. This will move the mermaid even further away from you into the sea. Now go to frame 204. Move the mermaid up. G. Move up. And rotate. So that she's in horizontal position again, heading left. Go to frame 216. Rotate the mermaid again, so that her head is below her tail, and move her down to the left. Now go back to frame 1 and play the animation to make sure it works. Good. Looks like it works. Step 26. Align the camera. Now let's align the camera so that it can see only the part of the scene that we want to be rendered. So in the sidebar, go to the View tab, and under View Lock, here, select Lock Camera to View. Now go to a frame where the mermaid is near its extreme position, which is at frame 90. So let's go to frame 90. Now let's hit N to hide the sidebar. And now let's zoom in and pan so that she can be still fully visible inside the camera view. Maybe something like this. Step 27. Render the animation. So first, let's save this. Hit N to open the sidebar again and uncheck camera to view, the lock camera to view option, and to close this sidebar again. And now we're almost ready to render the animation. First, go to the Output tab, which is over here, and select a folder where you want to save the animation. You can do it here. So select a folder where you want to save your animation. Accept. Now set the file format to FFmpeg video. And under encoding, set container to MPEG-4. Now under render, select render image to render a test render, to make a test render. Now you should see something like this. You can zoom out. Good. Close the window. Finally, under render, select render animation. Now, this will take some time to complete, but not too long. And I will now stop the recording and I will show you the final result in a minute. So here you can see what my rendered animation looks like. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like it, a thumbs up would be great. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Thanks for watching.